Hey there, YouTubers and subscribers! RoseRed17 here, and this is Eden Zero Volume 19, Chapters 159 to 167. Now, in the last volume, we got a nasty cliffhanger, with Shiki and the others seeing Witch damaged and Shira standing over her. And we're gonna see what's gonna happen next. But before I start talking about the first chapter of the book, I do want to address a single word about this volume, and that word is emotional. This volume had feelings for some characters, and not just the ones that we care for or know. And now to begin what I'm talking about with the chapters 159, The String of an Unbreakable Bond. The chapter starts where I left off with Witch on the ground and Shiki getting angry, attacks Shira, causing a fight between the two once again, while Rebecca starts to carry Witch back to the Eden Zero, while there's still another battle going on with Laguna and the princess. And a long story short, Laguna defeats her and manages to break her out of her obsession with Shira and the String of Destiny, breaking the thread that binds her to him, leaving at the end of the chapter with Hamura being followed by Creed. But he tells her his true identity, who is Sayuji Hojo, a member of the family that Hamura knows. Now in this chapter, it's more focused on the battle between Laguna and the princess, as the title states, since it's about them and having Laguna find a way to reason with her and help her find her senses. So after Creed reveals his identity to Hamura, she bows her head feeling guilty for being rude to him, but Creed doesn't seem to care about that and told her the reason why he left his hometown. The two became fast friends, but his crewmate Jesse came with a gun in his hand, pointing at them, most specifically at Hamura. But then Jesse starts to panic, and as Creed was about to use his ether gear to stop him, he gets shot. Like, holy that guy just got shot down and dies after making amends and being friendly with Hamura. And not to mention, the guy who shot him won't admit his mistakes. Like, dude, this is your fault. Don't deny it. You just shot your crewmate point blank when all he did was move his arm up. And the only reason he wanted to kill Hamura was because she was in league with Elsie. Not only this chapter shows the death of Creed, but also the death of a few of Goodwin's crew within the fighting scene. A sea serpent was summoned and blasted him into annihilation. Seriously, things are getting brutal in this chapter, and it ends with Shiki and Shira's rematch fight. Now in the next chapter shows the panel of Hamura and Jesse, but then Weiss shows up, but then Jesse runs away as Hamura closes Creed's eyes, saying that everyone around her always goes away. Which is sad, to be honest, because Hamura lost her teacher and now she lost a dear friend. Even though they just became friends, it's still sad. But moving on to the next panel, Rebecca finds Laguna while carrying Witch, asking him to take her back to Eden Zero, while she, Hino, and Happy take care of the All-Link system. Meanwhile, during the fight between the two gravity wielders, Shira told Shiki about what's going down in the temple, which is a fight between Ziki and Nero, and asks which one is going to win. But one other thing he mentioned is that there are bombs inside the temple, and Shira has full access to those bombs and willing to set it off whenever he can. Another page goes by with the panels of Nero and Ziki facing off against this guy, and then stabbed and killed by one of the Dark Stars and Nero, leaving the two with a conversation about who will take over the Empire at the end of the chapter. Now, as is said in the chapters 162, Ziki versus Nero, it is pretty much that. At least we get to go back to Shiki and Shira's battle once again, where Shiki uses his overdrive to try and finish him off, but then we get to see Shira's overdrive for the first time. And then at the end of the chapter, Shira removes one of Shiki's eyes, gushing out of its socket. What the is it really gonna end there? Yikes! That is all I wanted to say about this chapter. After all, the fight scene between Ziki and Nero didn't interest me in the slightest. So yeah, on to the next chapter. The next chapter, with Shiki's eye gone, Shira continues beating up Shiki as the battle brutally goes on, and with Shiki on his knees. Rebecca managed to find the All-Link system, but then an army of men spotted her and she and Happy managed to take some of the guys down, but then suddenly get crushed and splattered by Shira, who suddenly showed up. Rebecca was shocked to see him and was wondering where Shiki is, and then Shira told her that he's dead. And then she gets forced onto the ground as She-Ra activates the all-link system. But then suddenly Nero showed himself on the screen monitor and showed him the head of Ziki. Yeah, spoiler warning, he isn't dead yet. You'll see him at the end of the chapter. Not only that he shows Ziki's head, but also uses the Ether Gear wormhole to transport all the bombs in the temple to where She-Ra is now, which is Nero 66. She-Ra has a hard time believing him as Shiki burst through the ceiling and attacked him, and then suddenly a hand pierced through Nero's chest, to his surprise that Ziki is still alive. See, I told you you'll see him again at the end of the chapter. The battle goes on in space, and Witch managed to get to the Eden Zero ship with the help of Laguna, and he's also asking to help someone he brought, or so he thought, as the container that he put the woman in turns out to be empty. Back on the battlefield, Shiki and She-Ra continued their fight, as well as Ziki and Nero. Ziki destroys Nero's dice and defeated him. As for Shiki, he defeated She-Ra with his ultimate power that he learned from Zeno, which is called Black Sky, which is the weight of life in his heart, and created a giant sphere. Then after his victory, Ziki congratulated Shiki but then activated the bombs, willing to kill everyone within the planet as a celebration of his birthday, which is something I can never figure out, and that is where the chapter ends. So after Ziki activated the bomb and there's nothing they can do to stop it, and Shiki suggests that they save the people on the planet. However, Rebecca suggests they should save themselves by leaving those people behind since there's no time to save them all. Shiki must decide which path he should take between life and death. And then in the end, he decided they should leave, and then the Aqua Wing came crashing through the wall while everyone else escapes, including She-Ra's crew. While the war is still going on in space as they destroy the Sea Serpent, and then the Eden Zero shape came along with the announcement of She-Ra's defeat and that the war is over, but also warning others about the bombs from the planet and have everyone evacuate the area. Meanwhile, in the Eden Zero ship, Witch finally recovers and everything seems to be okay until Hermit noticed that the ship isn't moving. Well, that's because of Ziki, as he said to Shiki that he made the wrong choice and that he stopped the ship from moving, not letting anyone off the ship until the end of the chapter. Witch takes her stand and willing to fulfill her duty as the shield of Eden Zero. Now the moment of truth, the one chapter that I have been emotionally wounded by the end of this, Witch confessions of love within her final moments before sacrificing her life to save Shiki and the others. This was not easy for me. Witch was one of my favorite characters and now she's killed off, something I wasn't expecting. After going through such torture and abuse by She-Ra, in which she was restored and managed to get back on her feet, and yet, in the end, she still ends up dying. Reminds me of that time in Fairy Tail during the Tenro Island arc, where they all hold hands singing their Kumbaya and get blasted into smithereens. After they defeat somebody powerful and then another threat came along, and once they can't defeat that one, they decide to take the blast and then activate the fairy sphere without them noticing what they did. And they all come back in the end. Witch's situation is similar, but unlike the members of Fairy Tail, she doesn't come back to life, and it shows that she was annihilated, leaving no trace of her whatsoever. Now, this isn't the first important character that was killed off in this series. Remember Valkyrie, and the scene of her death emotionally impacted characters, especially Hamura. Even though her death was shocking, it wasn't much of a surprise, as there was hints of her dying before revealing the corpse. But with Witch, it was an unexpected surprise. Yes, there were scenes of Witch walking on death's door, but once I saw her recover and healed up, I was happy. She was better, and I was thinking to myself, yep, I knew it. The creator wasn't gonna let this one die. Or at least that's what I thought, until I read this chapter. Witch, having memories of her promise to protect Shiki with her life, gave her the ultimate sacrifice. Now, before I go on, there is one more scene I want to talk about. The scene with She-Ra and this woman, whose name is Arjuna, and she confessed her one-sided love to She-Ra, and that it wasn't her ether gear that bonded them together as She-Ra suggested. But as the two were being erased, they hugged each other, giving tears in She-Ra, as he is told that he is not a monster, and that the two might actually love each other. And now on to the next and final chapter of the volume. Now back in volume 18 when I said I'll talk about the chapter when I decided to ship Shikara 100% and become a fan. I know it's probably not a good time to talk about this after the sudden tragedy of Witch death, but then I saw this. This is what caused me to become a fan, and it is also what puts on the healing patch on Shiki's wounded heart. What Rebecca did was unbelievably reckless, but understandable. For the past 2 days, she's been using cat lever to try and stop Witch from dying in that point of time, but fail constantly as you can see the damage on her body, as she told the risk of demolishing her own health trying to save someone else she cares for, and also wants to help Shiki from his wounded heart. This chapter first started with the war ending, and then there is a conversation with Elsie and Ziki, and then there is the crew having a silent moment after Witch's death. But she isn't the only one that died though, as there were others such as a few members of Goodwin's crew, and also the princess that Laguna cared for, and Weiss decided not to give him a hard time despite what he said to him before. This is a heartbreaking chapter. I have never expected the creator would kill off the main character, and I know he's done it before in the previous work, and also with Valkyrie, who is one of the shining stars. But to me, Valkyrie wasn't part of the series as the main character. Yes, she was important to Hamura's backstory, and the death of her teacher strengthened her growth and it became a stronger person. But the thing is, we've only seen her in flashback with her and Hamura, and also the scenes of her death. And when Present came along, she was already dead. Therefore, the crew never saw what happened. But with Witch, they had a front row seat of her death and gave more of an impact on the story than it did with Valkyrie, because Witch was the first shining star that was introduced. One of the first characters that was known since the beginning, and one of the few characters that I'd grown attached to. And now, she's gone. But at least they gave her a funeral, so that makes me feel a little better. And I hope you enjoyed this volume as much as I did, even though during the parts where tears are shed and hearts are broken. But just like the characters, we the readers will continue on to the next volume. Well then everyone, thank you so much for watching, and if you are new here, you can subscribe to this channel, and you can also hit that notification button for more updates on my newest videos. And don't forget, you can check me out on Twitter, TikTok, and Discord, and I'll see you all in the next video. RoseRed17 out!